Welcome back into the Door Report alongside Will Byram and Trevor Houlihan. We welcome you back into the interview portion of the podcast, and I'd like to welcome in now the Anchor Collective guys, Jason Burns and Michael Lumpkin. Jason, former Vanderbilt wide receiver from 03 to 05. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Jason, but I know you played with Coach. 02, okay, gotcha. I know you played with Coach Lee there, at least for a couple years there, and got to know him pretty well. And Michael Lumpkin, of course, Director of Business Development. So we got all sides of the Anchor Collective here with us on the Door Report this evening. Guys, I want to start. We got a lot of Twitter questions to roll through as well. But for you, Jason, I guess first, well, and Michael, of course, what was the initiative? What kind of got you guys thinking, hey, maybe a collective for Vanderbilt would be a good idea?
Yeah. Well, first, guys, thanks for having us on. Excited to be here. Excited to engage with your audience and kind of Vandy Nation. So you guys done a really good job, what we could tell. So credit to all the work you guys have done, and excited for this opportunity to talk more about the Anchor Collective. So Billy, really, I mean, I think any college sports fan that was following this, whether kind of the novice level or really digging into it, you kind of heard what was happening with the rumblings with, the Supreme Court case, and then obviously, kind of what became NIL. And so, I had my ear to kind of the ground, just kind of listening from afar, really wasn't involved in it or looking to really get that engaged in it. And for me, it was on a spring break trip with my son, took my son back to campus. He's a travel baseball kid, so we're going to see. It was the first week of baseball last year. Spring football was in effect, and women's basketball was still playing. And spent the weekend out on campus and just started talking to a number of folks. Obviously, a lot of my relationships in the football department, and just kind of started, asking them and then asking me, kind of, what would you think about this? Do we think we have an opportunity to do it? It's obviously, we'll talk more about it, but an incredible opportunity for our fans to really invest into the program. I think, we've never had a chance like this before. So talking to the folks there, I started looking into it, doing some due diligence, talked to a number of other collectives, got a sense of the landscape of what was happening. And I thought, hey, this would be a good way to combine, my passion for business and also sports, being a former student athlete, and just a way to uniquely present and represent our student athletes at Vandy. So that was really the initial way it kind of fell into it, honestly. And we can talk more about the story, how we got here, but along the way was very fortunate through network with a lot of folks, particularly in the Vandy B School. Was connected with a professor there that ultimately connected me with Mike, and that's how Mike kind of got involved with us on this journey. So it's been a long road so far, but now we're just kind of getting going and excited for what's going to come.
There are 1,000 questions that I think Vanderbilt fans and I have. And we'll get into the background of like how this actually all got started and how you guys got connected, but just broad strokes, I think that this is kind of foreign to a lot of college football fans. So what will the Anchor Collective be doing with the money provided by, just kind of in broad terms, long term? And what will that look like for seeing student athletes, as you've already had some deals in place that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later with those names?
Yeah. Go, Mike, start.
Yeah, so we have a few different revenue streams, right? So, and I think this is what most of the engagement's been with on Twitter is for fan subscribers, and then one-time contributors. There's a couple different things there. So fan subscribers, you can see on our website, there's going to be the opportunity for a number of benefits depending on the tier you join. And so what we're going to be doing is with those contributions that come in, and it can be team specific, we're going to then be coming to terms with student athletes to promote, to provide value back to the subscribers. And that could be through a virtual meet and greet. That could be through an in-person appearance. It could be through a number of social media type opportunities. We're really going to be really creative and innovative and listen to what subscribers want and providing value back to them. And then for one-time donors through the Anchor Collective website, what we're going to do is, those individuals are going to be providing funds for student athletes to promote the Anchor Collective. So from all sports, and basically what that's going to do, especially in the near term, is raising awareness and education. So, people, to your point, are not quite sure about what exactly a collective is. We really want to share it from the perspective of student athletes, because at the end of the day, That's what we're working on behalf of. So what NIL is, what it means for them, how they can leverage these opportunities to build their brands and take advantage of their opportunities. In addition to what Vanderbilt already provides, we really want to be a solution that is that next piece of the puzzle that so many student athletes are now looking to find at institutions, especially at the pedigree of someone like at an institution like Vanderbilt. It's, hey, what does that NIL situation look like? And we really want to answer that bell and think that we and all fans have a fantastic opportunity to do so.
Yeah, great point. Just want to thank Jason and Michael first off. On Twitter and the internet and all the message boards, and even just chit chatting with Vanderbilt fans, whenever these collectives started popping up, a lot of the fans were asking, when is Vanderbilt going to get a collective? When is this going to move forward? And we always sort of heard rumblings that it was in the works and to be patient. So for it to finally be here, just from a fan perspective, I know obviously the student athletes are going to benefit greatly from it, but just from a fan aspect, and knowing how much this could really help push Vanderbilt athletics forward, is huge. So first off, because at the end of the day, I'm just a diehard Vanderbilt fan. So just from a fan perspective, I know how much this is going to help student athletes and Vanderbilt athletics in general. So thank you guys for taking the initiative to start this. I want to ask a quick question about the student athletes. So the big news obviously was AJ Swan, CJ Taylor, Will Shepherd already signed. Wonderful news. Whenever it comes to sort of targeting student athletes, how does that process go? Do you guys sort of seek out a specific student athlete who you think will be good for the brand, or do they come to you, or is it sort of a mixed match of both? Because obviously those three are arguably the biggest names in all of Vanderbilt football. And I know whenever you guys first had the tent set up for the Florida game, I believe Jordan Wright was there, and who's the star of Vanderbilt basketball. So do you sort of like pick and choose who would help the brand, or obviously it's open to all athletes? Is it sort of they come to you, you go to them, 50-50?
Yep, I'll start and let Mike take over. Yeah, so good question. I think it's a combination of all. One, to your first point, this is, and we're talking about it. This is really the first time, obviously in all of our lives where, not only is it a new kind of industry born, so to speak, or at least above board now, if you put it lightly. But where, fans who are vested into Vandy athletics can really do something about the competitive landscape of what you see on the field, on the court, in a real tangible way. It's different than investing in, not to say these things don't matter, because they do, but it's different than investing in facilities and other resources where it's not as impactful directly to the athlete. So one, that's a golden opportunity for us to change that landscape. In terms of how we engage with the student athletes, so as Mike said, like we want to view this as a partnership, right? So it's important to note the collective is going to be for all sports, all student athletes. There's roughly 360 some student athletes on campus today, and so we've set out our kind of track is to cover all athletes and all sports. Obviously, like anything else, there's starters and there's second team and there's third team, and so from a business standpoint, what we're trying to do now is to focus on those student athletes that we determine from. We have an internal way right now of valuing this. We'll get smart about this over time. Who are the most influential on campus, and that could be over a number of different criteria, not just their stats or what they do on the field. It could be who's the team captain, who may just have a following because they're into certain charitable work, or who just has an affinity to the local fan base because they're maybe they'll star athletes in high school in the Nashville area. So we kind of account for all these things. But obviously, we want to focus on those athletes that are, quote unquote, the kind of top tier athletes, and engage them because, as I'm sure we'll get into this, from a recruiting standpoint, obviously, collectives are not allowed to get involved in recruiting or inducing, but what we can do, what coaches can do, are point to examples of how the collective has worked with current student athletes, and so. That's obviously strategically being done, and we want to focus on those athletes that we think are going to also kind of engage the fan base and get them excited as well.
All right, I got. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to add one thing in that, and we really are working on behalf of all student athletes, and one way we're demonstrating that is providing them opportunities to share more information with us about who they are. So anyone who onboards to our platform, we're going to provide them a survey where they can share. It's not just who you are on the field, who are under the helmet, or whatever wherever you're competing, right? It's it's who you are as a person, and all student athletes, almost all of our student athletes are active on social media, and that really provides a unique and opportunity to connect directly with fans, right? So I think we want to look at opportunities in as well-rounded a manner as possible, right? And if there are student athletes who are showing initiative or onboarding on our platform, telling us who they are, we want to provide them opportunities as well, because frankly, fans might not know about those stories about who they are. And I think that's one thing that we want to provide value to the fan subscription model. One aspect of that is going to be content. And we feel we have an incredible opportunity to deepen that fan experience by providing stories, access to student athletes on campus that they simply might not be aware of. And the best part is we're paying them for their time. We're paying for them to be a part of this content. This isn't something where they're volunteering us any of the hours, the very little hours they have in their day, on top of being a student at Vanderbilt University and an athlete. So we feel there's just a lot of wins all around, and we want to take advantage of those and have fans be a big part of it.
All right, let's dive into the Twitter sphere. I'm going to start with Patrick Sawyer. This is fairly personal for you guys. We've talked about the players, but Patrick asks, what history do you guys have identifying and setting up endorsement deals? Obviously, we're not asking you to go into individual names and details, but if you could, I guess, go through somewhat of a broad history and background of your guys' experience sort of setting up endorsement deals with whether they're athletes or whoever.
Yeah, I think, Will, you asked, or I'm not sure which one of you asked originally about how we got into this, how the Anchor Collective came to be. And for me, I moved to Nashville about 4 years ago for a full-time opportunity with a sports agency based here called MGC Sports. Started in client marketing, working on behalf of NFL players and professional golfers. And while doing so, I was also at Vanderbilt getting my master's in leadership and organizational performance, Peabody. And worked there for about 3.5 years and had an awesome experience, learned a lot. But July 1st of 2021, when NIL came to be, changed a lot in the sports world as a whole, and the agency model really shifted. And for me, that resulted in working with college athletes across the country and representing them in partnerships with businesses, engaging with collectives. So I really gained an understanding quickly about what the NIL world entailed. I didn't at the time think I was going to be coming at it from the collective angle, but was fortunate enough to connect with Jason and learn about what he was building, and really just wanted to be a resource for my alma mater at the time to start. But quickly saw the opportunity for it to be more than that. And Vanderbilt's just an awesome institution to be at, and we have great fans and great programs, and we're investing a lot in the success of our programs across the board. And I think that's something that I immediately gravitated to and saw the opportunity to take advantage of.
Yeah, just to, I don't have any background directly in marketing. My background has been in more of the parking and transportation industries. I've been an entrepreneur there, run a number of businesses in those industries. And so when you look at the collective and work with student athletes, a big part is working with individuals who are designated as independent contractors, 1099s. And so, understanding how those relationships work from a legal standpoint, and going back to the compliance piece of this, making sure that we protect diversity, certainly student athletes. That's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and obviously I got a lot of experience of working in that space from a legal standpoint, and being a former player, kind of knowing kind of what these guys go through, what these ladies go through, the commitment, the demands on their time, but also just I know for many athletes never been able to really control their own narrative, right? I think we've seen that over the last few years with different podcasts, things have come out. I'm very much in tune to how I think athletes can really control their brands now. So, that's kind of the good combination of me and Mike we bring to the table.
Sorry, I had a cough there right before I was about to ask my question. This is kind of a combination, and either of you guys can answer, probably both, of some Twitter questions and then my own. But I've been looking up a lot of NIL documents, reading a lot of different websites, and on Vanderbilt's actual website, their document relating to NIL and how to properly go about that, what can be endorsed, the communication with the university. So I think there is some confusion if you aren't really fully haven't dug into it as to what is related to name, image, and likeness, commonly referred to as NIL, versus what is still the university's property. So when these players are signing, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't have them doing anything in the Vanderbilt logo. So just in general terms, what has the process been like communicating with the university? And then what are some things that you see commonly that are confusion points for people just surrounding NIL in general?
Yeah, so I'll address the first point, Will, and that's that actually so many collectives are not able to, in partnerships with student athletes, use the IP of that school, including the marks and logos. We're very fortunate to have developed a really strong relationship with Weirfield, who's the multimedia rights holder for Vanderbilt, and have come to an agreement with them where we are able to use the IP. So you'll see even in those first posts, right, that we're putting up, like if we didn't have IP rights, then we wouldn't be using photos of them in uniform, right? So for us, it really is.
I didn't realize that, but that's
no, you're
awesome.
good. Yeah, I mean, this is to the heart of your question
awesome.
Immediately, right? Which is, and what's really important for us, not only is an investment into all of athletics, but it's something where we're immediately able to start a partnership and set a precedent that we're really going to do things the Vanderbilt way. And we don't take having the ability to use the V in these partnerships with student athletes lightly. It certainly makes things more convenient for them and convenient for us. But that's the first point. And then Jason, I don't know if you want to address the remainder there.
Yeah. So just to round out Mike's point, we're from what we know, we're the third collective in the country that has developed that type of partnership with Learfield. So very excited about that. They've been incredible partners for us, and we think it's going to really yield a lot of benefits for our student athletes. In terms of like when I mentioned earlier, I was doing some diligence and just looking at getting into this, and what I quickly learned the few conversations were the three things that the better run collectives had in place. One, it was for all sports, right? So it wasn't just like a sports specific collective. So it was able to cover kind of the entire universal offerings from an athletic standpoint. Two, while, and we can get into more into this, while they, and even at that time it wasn't as clear as it is now, while the NCAA does have guidelines on the do's and don'ts, what's permissible and impermissible, you could quickly kind of see that the collectives that were operating in some type of communication, at least where there's some understanding of what's happening, seem to be in a better position to execute. And then three was what Mike touched on. I think we identified that having access to the IP would make us distinct and unique and give us somewhat of a competitive advantage, or at a minimum just credibility with the fan base, and that we are a legitimate entity that is representing student athletes that are at Vanderbilt University.
Yeah, and I think, Will, just to put a bow on it, I suppose, get in the Christmas spirit here, is that we look around and obviously there are the Anchor Collective is I think we're in the hundreds as far as like how in the order of founding as across the country, right? We're not first to the game by any means, but what we quickly realize, and I think what's going to differentiate us is our ability, our relationship with the university. And that isn't just using the IP, right? Like we want to create relationships, mutually beneficial relationships with as many entities as we can partner with, right? Because that's going to provide us value, and we hope that will provide them value. I mean, we're working with, whether it be on the creative front, and there are limitations. We, of course, are going to abide by guidelines, but to the greatest extent possible, we want to work with Vanderbilt because these other institutions don't have what Vanderbilt has, right? Which is an incredibly smart student body, and an incredibly passionate fan base that we want to tap into. But I think the relationship with the university is going to be paramount for us, and we're going to seek strategic partnerships across the board and try to work in concert with all of the really great educational things they're able to do, and we want to fill in the gaps on the NIL front where they're not able to work.
Go ahead, Trev.
Trev, you got any?
Yeah, so I hate to steal Arlen's point, but I saw his question on Twitter, and just I'll rattle it off real quick and then sort of add my 2 cents. Arlen Goodrich on Twitter asked, how competitive are the opportunities compared to the other schools? And then I just want to ask a second follow-up question that in regards to how competitive the Anchor Collective is to collectives of other schools. How much of an advantage do you think you guys have just being based and supporting a university based in a major metropolitan city like Nashville? I think if you look at someone like the Gator Collective or the Grove Collective, let's just call it what it is. Gainesville and Oxford, Mississippi are not even in the same stratosphere as Nashville. So do you plan on utilizing any of that to say, hey, maybe we can get you partnered up with local businesses around here, or just utilize the fact that Nashville as itself has a major brand? And how much of an advantage do you think sort of that aspect of being the only SEC school based in a major city help you guys?
I'll let Mike speak more directly to it, but it's huge. I mean, that is certainly a part of the calculus here, right? I mean, I think, we've heard it before, kids typically come to Vandy because of, the degree to play in SEC and Nashville. When you look at, our, competitors and the geography that they're in, until I live in Austin, Texas, until, UT comes in a few years, like there's no other market that's even, to your point, close to Nashville. So strong corporate base, opportunities galore in terms of, where we see synergy with our student athletes. So, absolutely, we're kind of, already hard at work on that front. Got some things that we're working on now, that we're not prepared to announce today, but certainly that's going to be a big part of it. And, I think, but also doing that in a way that's unique to Vanderbilt and the Vanderbilt student athletes experience, right? We are not Georgia, we're not Tennessee, we're not LSU, and not knocking those schools for what they're doing. But Vandy is Vandy, and I think that we want to stay true to form, and we think that that's going to be a competitive advantage that we have, honestly, going forward.
Right. And the first question, I think, talking about how fans, either one-time donors or subscribers, can play a role, the role businesses can play in connecting with student athletes through NIL, we think is going to be immensely successful for us. And it's going to be exactly that. It's going to be local businesses that want to partner with student athletes to promote their business. And then there's also a ton of educational opportunities. The words I use are immersive educational experiences that we can tie NIL with, right? Where you're not just promoting a business, you're really able to grow your brand and your experience by working with a business. And we feel that being based in Nashville, the growth that we're seeing all around us, and the proximity with the university being right down the street, that there are so many different partnerships, unique and creative ways that we can work together. And that's really going to be one of my main focuses in developing this business, is finding what those passions are for student athletes, how we can combine them with businesses and create mutual value.
All right. One of the more frequently asked questions was jerseys. And this is something that obviously Vanderbilt hasn't had. There are several other colleges that haven't been able to do this, but with this collective, is that a goal of you guys? Because you think about it, with a young AJ Swan at quarterback, Shepard, a guy you guys have signed as well, CJ Taylor, you're starting to see names that fans have started to identify with. And Jason, you played with Jay Cutler, Earl Bennett. I mean, I don't know, half the stadium was filled with number 10 jerseys, but they didn't have the last name Bennett on it. So for you guys, what does that process look like of putting jerseys in stores, but also having the last names? Is that an option?
Certainly the ability to leverage, NIL name, the ability to leverage that in partnerships is something we want to explore in all areas. We currently have a merch partnership that it's just Anchor Collective merchandise at this point, but we really do see opportunities to work with student athletes and provide them a meaningful royalty percentage from anything that is incorporating their NIL. There are existing players in this space that are working on if it's the authentic jerseys, and we have to really navigate those existing relationships. So at this point, we're not sure if if we're the actors that are going to be doing an authentic Vanderbilt jersey. However, what we feel we're capable of doing is really with an understanding of who student athletes are and what their brands are. If they're interested, we can do some type of co-branded merchandise opportunity, and we feel we can be a vehicle for that. It's a vehicle to grow a brand. It might not be the name with the jersey, but it could be, like one example, and we need to connect with them on this, but the linemen are called the Grease Gang, right? Like imagine a shirt where it's like the Grease Gang, and we get all of them involved. These are the hypotheticals that we can really run with. And so the first thing we can do is understand what those storylines are, what really connects with fans. But yes, we see a lot of potential on the merchandise front. Not sure if it'll be that authentic jersey, but there's a ton of potential there we're excited to explore.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to Twitter here, and no personal investment in this whatsoever. Me, Billy, and Trevor have no personal investment in this question. And since we didn't ask it, it's not me, Billy, or Trevor asking you this on the podcast.
It's a great question.
Will there be great question. So this is from @J_Willie4. Will there be a partnership between the Anchor Collective and TDR whereby Vandy athletes with NIL deals can make guest appearances on the podcast? Great question.
Billy, I was listening to your ad read on the last episode, and you did a pretty darn good job. So if we have some mutual corporate partners that want to get any of these student athletes on the pod, I think that's something we should explore. You guys do a great job covering all things Vanderbilt, and we need to collaborate for sure. We were trying to get that conversation rolling. We need to make it happen.
Absolutely.
I love it. We did not tell him to ask that, by the way, either.
It's just what the fans want to know. That's it.
Yeah. We're for the fans, and we're really looking forward to what's possible here. I got another personal one, guys, and we'll get a couple more in from Twitter here. How does Vanderbilt sort of position themselves? Obviously the university, you guys are in contact with them, but within the SEC footprint, we've talked about this a lot on our podcast. We've said Vanderbilt has to think outside the box. They have to think differently. So are you guys sort of following that mold of, hey, we need to do things a little bit differently because we can't think like an Alabama collective, or we can't think like an Ole Miss collective? Are you guys following that mold, or are you saying, let's go full throttle, we can think like them?
Yeah, I think it's I think, well, it's an interesting question, right? So to me, the way I have framed this up in different meetings is that, look, we want to make sure that we understand where the line is, and we get as close to it as possible without going over. And I think, for me, what that means is obviously, some of this stuff is like anything in sports, right? It's a copycat league, right? So we look out there, we see, best practices, we see things that are working well, and certainly there's ideas that we get from other collectives, other schools that's doing different things. But then I think we also very conscious about how can we put our Vanderbilt touch on this, right? And so look, the easy things to say is look, we want to go out there and do what Tennessee has done, right? They've got estimated a lot of money allegedly in the coffers there. And so certainly we have a goal and a vision to get to that point. I think that we're gonna be more methodical about it. I think in our case, we're really truly looking to build a sustainable business model here, right? This is not, what we don't want to create is an environment where, we've got a couple blank checks and we're just throwing money around, right? I think a lot of Vanderbilt, from an athletic standpoint, is built on developing programs, developing individuals. And so there's a component of that will, a spirit of that we'll operate within. But, make no guess about it. We want to be aggressive. We want to be innovative. We want to be progressive on how we approach our business.
I will ask one more thing before we go back to Twitter. You guys answered this on another question that somebody asked, but somebody asked about targeting specific players. You guys answered that right now it's just team-based. In the future, though, with the guys who are signed like AJ, Will, or CJ, is there an opportunity in the near future? And I know you guys might not be able to speak on this right now, but would there ever be an opportunity for, let's say, after a big game, CJ Taylor had 3 tackles for losses and a forced fumble, and someone wanted to make a direct contribution to him in form of a one-time donation? Is that something in the works, or is there sort of restrictions regarding NIL and NCAA on that?
Yeah, so there's clear guidelines that you cannot have any type of NIL activity that's kind of performance related. So what any collective cannot do and should not do, if you're following the rules, you can't say, okay, CJ, because you had a great game tonight, we're going to give you another X number of dollars. Now, but there's also creative ways to allow CJ to leverage, his NIL in forms of, a simple way of that we're going to roll out at some point will be each student athlete will have their own kind of personal referral code. So they can certainly post out and say, hey, come subscribe. And the collective will give them a commission on those subscription sales that come in using their referral code. And so that's one example of how, you could, provide an opportunity for CJ in that scenario to leverage his NIL without it being directly tied to, what he did in a particular game.
I see.
That's interesting because, you think about, some kind of big performance that we've seen from this season. The opportunity is there, but, I like how you talked about leverage. There is kind of, a way to sort of go around that if you are a player. This is a good question. This is one of our first questions from Bryce Smith on Twitter. He asks, is the primary strategy of the collective to retain existing players, boost transfer portal recruiting, boost high school recruiting, or some mix of the three? And I think we know the answer there, but how are you, is one above the other, or is it all sort of, we want to help Vanderbilt athletics and that's sort of the goal? We don't prioritize high school recruiting over, or even if you do prioritize high school recruiting at all. But how do you guys sort of balance those three that Bryce had asked about?
Yeah, I think we work right. I mean, our first priority is maintaining the eligibility of every student athlete, and with that, we're going to work within NCAA guidelines. And because of that, we're going to focus on the student athletes enrolled at Vanderbilt. And what our understanding is that as we do a great job, it can be communicated to those who are in high school, those in the portal, that hey, the Anchor Collective is doing really good work in providing NIL opportunities to student athletes across campus, and we want to be that. But and staying within the guidelines, we're going to work to make the best possible Vanderbilt student athlete NIL experience for those currently on our campus.
So that's politically correct answer we got to give, right? but Mike is right. I mean, the reality is, the collective, which is viewed by the NCAA as a booster, the NCAA will hold the university responsible for any actions that the collective takes, whether the university knows about it or doesn't. So obviously, we have to follow those guidelines. And truthfully, the way we view our role is we're not recruits. Like, I'm not Barton. I don't have, I play the game. I know what I know to my knowledge, but I'm not out there day to day looking at high school prospects, right? You guys probably know more about it than I do. I listen to your podcast. You guys are all over. There's a kid from St. Aug that is my high school I went to back in New Orleans, so I do know about him.
There you go. There you go.
And there was a good meeting last week, so we'll see. But back to the collective. No, our role is not to get involved in the recruiting game. Again, you can't use any dollars to entice or induce an athlete, whether it be in the portal or whether it be come out of high school to come. So the way we'll be effective is by again, like Mike said, showing our current student athletes great opportunities, and that will quite naturally get into those conversations. And coaches can obviously talk about the facts of the collective when they're on the recruiting trail. And so we obviously have an open line of communication with coaches, just in terms of kind of what we're doing. And so they can use that information as they see fit when they're out there recruiting athletes.
Yeah, and I get the I don't know if it's frustration or just interest or what it is that with those questions, but we understand right now that the NIL world is a wild one, and the amount of student athletes that are in the transfer portal combined with NIL has created quite the change in environment, right? And that's people are asking a lot of questions, but to Jason's point, we want to create a long-term sustainable business that provides value to student athletes. And what it looks like right now might not be what it looks like 6 to 12 months down the road. And we want to make sure that we're there, we're at the top of our game and we're answering the needs of our student athletes based on whatever the environment provides us.
Michael has pre-answered multiple questions that I've had here. I was
That's because
literally
I spent
going
too
to
much
say
time
we
on
all
Twitter
know.
reading the questions.
Well, yeah, this one isn't even from Twitter. I was literally going to ask, the NIL, we all know, is kind of like the wild, wild west right now. So I was even going to use the term wild. But, you have to be careful with how you guys are saying different things and using the right language. And we all know kind of the real operation behind the scenes. So it's a little tough to operate within an environment that really the rules aren't very straightforward. There's just a lot of gray area right now. So I don't think anybody expects the NCAA to make this process any simpler in the upcoming 6 to 12 months, like you mentioned. Is there anything in particular that you guys are worried about in the short term as well as the long term as far as more regulation is concerned?
No, I mean, there's a lot of ideas being floated out there about what's going to happen with this. Look, at the end of the day, one thing I feel fairly confident about, I've used this analogy, like the toothpaste is out of the tube in terms of athletes being able to be compensated for the NIL. Under no scenario do I think that's ever going to go away. Could there be some change in the structure and how it's done? Possibly, but when you dig into that, there's no easy answer to any of that stuff. So I feel like collectives will be here, for the immediate and for the long-term future. And so obviously that's our goal is to track along that path. But then the first part of your question, Will, was I'll do a blank here. You asked about what was it?
I was just talking about the different challenges and the NIL, kind of shifting constantly.
So I got it. Yeah. So I think the rules are fairly clear, especially the recent guys that came out, a few weeks back. What's not really clear right now is the enforcement. So that part is not really clear, and that's what I think.
A fair market value is kind of hard to determine when there's never been a market before to give a fair market value. What is a fair market value for a college athlete, and how do you even go about determining that?
Yeah. You must have been listening to our call with Vandy compliance today. That's exactly what came up.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add, Will, is that there are so many different levels to this, right? There's the institutional guidelines, there's the state guidelines. Tennessee has an NIL law. There's the NCAA, and the NCAA looking to Congress for a potential law, right? There are so many different factors that can change, and those are simply beyond our control. So, I think what provides us, peace and understanding is that we're constantly reviewing as much as possible. And, we just have, an ear to everything we can in this space. And I think if we're informed, we're able to work best for our business in the near, medium, long term, whatever that provides. We understand we're in a space can be volatile, and we have to be agile as a result of that. But I think we're at a good place to be that.
Guys, I like the toothpaste, and then I'll let you go, Billy. This isn't I just like the toothpaste out of the tube analogy. I really did like that, but we've talked about it on here before multiple times. The NCAA was a much more powerful organization and had a lot more control before the NIL. And that is a formerly very powerful organization that I don't imagine is going to voluntarily make this process less controlled by them, especially in recruiting. So that's something that has just fascinated me, is watching the NCAA go from this giant behemoth controlling every aspect of universities and players to basically losing 50% of their control and now trying to kind of, claw it back.
they got swept in the Supreme Court, man. That's tough. You know,
everybody loves free markets unless it's sports. Then we hate free markets in sports.
Right,
Exactly.
right. Guys, I got one.
NCAA did what today, I think, announced a new hire to take over the NCAA, like the governor of Massachusetts.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I saw that today. So I don't know what that means, if anything at all, but yeah, but you know.
Who knows? Guys, let's go here. What about the business model being for profit as opposed to, or, versus not for profit? What are, sort of from you guys' perspective, the pros and cons of for profit as opposed to not for profit for you guys with the collective?
Yeah, good question. So when you look across the landscape of collectives today, the last data point I saw, we get on these monthly calls with 25 different collectives and talk about best practices. I think maybe 15 to 20% were kind of designated as a not-for-profit, either 501c3 or C7, and the majority at that time were still for-profit. I think there was a trend of newer collectives going to not-for-profit status. When we first started doing our homework and diligence on this, obviously talked to, can't tell how many people we talked to, a number of people in the collective space, obviously, legal experts. And the guidance we got was you're better off going a for-profit model for a couple reasons, a couple primary reasons. One, it affords you the most flexibility in terms of the different types of activations you can offer to your student athletes, right? So when you're in the not-for-profit space, you're somewhat limited in the type of engagements, activations that you can offer to student athletes. And again, looking across who we thought was doing it well, we didn't want to limit ourselves. So just from a business standpoint, I think we want to open the doors up for multiple opportunities. Two, there were rumblings at the time. This is going back 6 months ago now, when we first kind of just started having conversations about potential legislation coming down that would not allow collectives to have the 501c3 or C7 designation. There is some legislation that's being proposed that we'll see where it goes next year. But there's a possibility that collectives won't be able to have that designation going forward. And so to avoid any potential change in course down the road, it makes sense for us to kind of just stick to this the for-profit model out the gate. And then just like me personally, if I throw my own personal sense into this, the idea of paying a student athlete to go do charitable work, although I'm all about charitable work, and I think that's going to be a big component kind of what we do in working with local charities and partners, that just didn't sit right with me.
Sort of defeats the purpose. Yeah.
I just think anybody asking why it's a for-profit versus not for profit, just like it doesn't really justify a response. I mean, I think it's really similar to people talking about a 15% expense that's not being given directly. I mean, that's just not understanding how transactional fees work just for a website and having fees associated with hosting a website. So I had to prevent myself from like going ballistic on Twitter on you guys' behalf earlier, just because of some of the questions that were being asked. But it's an NIL, it's name, image, and likeness. The idea is these players can now profit off of their likeness. And so I don't know that question, Billy, I definitely saw some people talking about that. Billy, are you muted or am I?
Oh yeah, we can't.
Billy, I think we lost you, man.
I will say,
you guys got me?
There we go.
Go ahead.
Now I was saying that's the reason I asked it, because we saw a lot of that, when
I wasn't calling you
days.
Stupid, Billy, just to clarify.
Yeah, because I mean, let's face it, there's so many questions out here that we're all kind of trying to figure it out together, and that's why we've got these collective guys on. So guys, I really appreciate y'all checking in. I want to leave it to y'all for a kind of a final statement, or anything else that you might have not said, even though I feel like we said literally everything we can. But kind of, I'll leave it up to you guys to kind of close it out here.
Well, first of all, thank you, Billy, and thank you, Trevor, Will. We appreciate it, and I appreciate the responses to that. I mean, we want to be transparent about what we're doing, and I think with that, what our percentage, we're reinvesting that back into the business, and I think through the fan subscription model especially, right? Like we hope that when you see the content that we're able to put out, the events we're able to put on for those who decide to subscribe, we hope that you see that money going a long way for us, because it really is about getting as much student athletes as possible, but as Jason said, also building a sustainable business, right? And that's going to be by providing a lot of value back to fans and really being able to invigorate that fan experience. And Jason touched on this, and I think I'll just go into the closing statement, if you will. But I think fans now have a more direct opportunity through the Anchor Collective to make an impact on the programs they care about than ever before. And it was the last podcast when, Will, it might have been you. I think you might be the rant guy, but I think you were talking about how, NIL,
Absolutely.
transport portal, it's providing a change in the landscape. And with that change comes opportunity to innovate. We really want to be that trusting, innovative partner that Vanderbilt fans can look to and say, if you contribute here, that we're going to help make our programs better. We're going to improve the experience of Vanderbilt student athletes, and let's go win. That's what we want to do across the board. And there are programs at Vanderbilt that have had a lot of success, the Vandy boys being one of the biggest, and we want to help them maintain that in this world where there are a lot of big collectors throwing a lot of money at baseball teams. And for those who want to take a step they maybe haven't in a while, we want to be the answer for that as well. So the great thing is, if you're a fan and you didn't feel like you were empowered to be a part of that change before, now you can. You can go to the Anchor Collective website and subscribe. You can give one time, and all that money is going to go to student athletes and helping us show you who our student athletes are. And we think that we're going to do that at a really high quality level.
I'm
Jason?
fired up.
That's pretty well
I'm
done.
ready to rock.
Yeah,
that's pretty well done.
Michael's got a way with words, man. He's firing me up. He could be in the locker room and get these boys fired up. But guys, I really appreciate you.
I've been in the locker room.
Just want to go ahead and give them my credit card info.
Yeah. Now that I will
already donated.
Put me in the
once,
hole
I'll say
further,
that.
baby.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
We subscribe to you guys stuff too, so appreciate what you guys are doing. For our fans, our student athletes. Just the Commodore Nation. Last thing I'll say is Mike said, again, if you ever had an issue with Vanderbilt athletics at all, right, this is your ticket to now actually invest into that. And we're going to do our part. You'll see the stuff that we have coming up. But the reality is, we are, somebody. I didn't think I directly answered the question earlier, Trevor, but our resources compared to other collectives are not comparable right now. So Mike and I are very smart guys. We know how to stretch money and make things happen, and we're going to do that. But we need support, and we need that support to help our student athletes. So. Rant, Ray, get on Twitter. I'm not much on Twitter. Mike screenshots me these stuff all the time. But put your money where your mouth is, baby. That's all I can say.
I will ask one more before we let you go, just to you, Jason, just a sort of little lighthearted one. How badly do you wish NIL was around whenever you were a student athlete?
Oh man, and look, I was a walk-on guy too, so it was not even worse. Yeah, so I obviously, it's just. Here's the obvious, people talk about the money what the athletes are getting, but truly the opportunity for them to learn about money, learn about business, learn about relationships, learn about being accountable, being responsible. I mean, we talked to a lot of football players. We said, look, you guys are professional athletes now. I mean, let's just be honest about where this thing is at. And so there are responsibilities that come with that, but it's just a tremendous way for them to start their careers off, whether they end up going, into their professional sports or, in business. And so I think it's phenomenal, man. Yeah, I certainly wish I would have had that in my number of teammates, but that's why we're gonna do our part now to make sure that this thing is sustainable and stays around, and many athletes for many years to come can benefit from this.
Good luck on your ventures with Vanderbilt, guys.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, guys. Take care.